On May the 3rd, 2007, 3-year-old Madeleine Mccann went missing.
Please, if you have Madeleine, let her come home.
168 days later, that is the only indisputable fact about this extraordinary case.
I have no facts to sustain that the child is alive or not.
Tonight, Dispatches sends 5 leading criminal investigators to Portugal.
If we got to the marks, then that would have to be an investigative priority.
Their brief? To bring 134 years of experience to the search for Madeleine. The Portuguese village of Praia da Luz is a quiet holiday resort. But for the last 6 months, it has been at the centre of an intense police investigation and frenzied media speculation. Dispatch's team of criminal experts arrives in Luz intending to cast fresh light on what might have happened to 3-year-old Madeleine Mccann in a case that has dominated the headlines.
What we're looking to do is what we would have done had this been reported in the UK.
I would really want to know an awful lot about the typical patterns of activity of the families involved.
What we're talking about is, did she leave on her own, was she taken by somebody else, or was it none of the above?
Portuguese secrecy laws prevent the police from revealing any details about the investigation. Using information in the public domain and from their own expert observations, our team will analyse what could have happened to Madeleine. The last photograph of Madeleine Mccann was taken by her mother Kate at 2:29 p.m. at the pool of the Mark Warner Ocean Club, where they were staying with friends.
They were a very social group, and they seemed all to be really respectful, nice, loving parents. Madeleine, I found out to be quite bright, quite shy, very sweet, very beautiful girl. On May the 3rd, it was just Madeleine I was reading a story to. I later saw them around lunchtime. That's the last time I saw them together as a family.
The McCanns say they put their children to bed at 7 p.m. It has been reported that Madeleine shared her room with her younger sister and brother. At 8:30, Kate McCann and her husband Jerry joined friends for dinner at the Ocean Club tapas bar. Between 9:05 and 9:30, Jerry McCann and 2 friends checked the children 150 metres walk away. At 10 o'clock, it was Kate McCann's turn to check on the children.
I was working that night with something called Drop and Crash. We had 1 child left, and the mother came in, picked up the child and just mentioned, hang on a minute, I've just seen a guy who's run past me, he seemed really distressed, and I recognised him as being a guest at Mark Warner, but he was shouting a name out, something like Maddie or Abby or Gabby.
Mark Warner staff were briefed and fanned out across the resort.
And went straight to the apartment. I sort of walked in, did a quick scan around, and been told, no, she's not here. Kate McCann was outside, and she was very distressed. She was saying things like, I've taken her, and she's gone, and you know, where is she? She was crying, and there were tears down her face, and it was absolutely heartbreaking to see.
I arrived at the Ocean Club reception at around about 10 to 11. And at the time that we arrived, a police car arrived. And as the police officer got out, a man approached him, who I now know is Jerry McCann, and said that his daughter had been abducted, that there was no way that she could have opened the shutters herself. She'd definitely been taken.
We started with 3 hypotheses: that Maddie had wandered off, that she'd been taken by...
Based on the few details that have emerged from witnesses and on their own years of investigative experience, Dispatch's team of experts apply British police procedure to develop a strategy for their review.
It really reinforces to me the need to get the full background.
The team is led by Chris Stevenson, a former detective chief superintendent. Among his 30 murder cases, he ran the investigation into the Soham murders of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman.
And make sure that we've got that all totally and clearly documented. Very much a case of gathering as much information as quickly as you can so that you can then develop which of the hypotheses is the most likely.
And I think when you get that framework, you can begin to see the various possibilities, implications.
Forensic psychologist Professor David Cantor has compiled offender profiles in 150 serious criminal investigations, including abductions and murders.
There seems to me to be a range of possibilities from, on the one hand, the child has wandered off, in other words, the child is the cause of the disappearance, right the way through to the other extreme, where it's some organised network of criminals who've come in from somewhere else looking for an opportunity and have taken the child away.
Based on David Cantor's model, they resolved that there are three clear possibilities: that Madeleine wandered off on her own and got lost, that she was abducted, or that something happened to her which may have involved her family. They start by looking at the first hypothesis, that Madeleine woke up and walked off by herself.
For instance, we need to know what the pattern of behaviour is of Madeleine. I mean, did she wander at all? Was she likely to wake up at night? If she did wake up, did she know her way to the pool? Could she find it on her own? Would she have gone looking for her parents?
The team visit the McCann's apartment in conditions similar to the night that Madeleine disappeared. First they explore how she could have got out of the apartment.
Still half over. 6 months later, isn't it? It is.
Madeleine's bedroom window faced the car park at the back of the apartment, next to the main door. Reports indicate that according to the McCanns, the shutters were closed and the door locked. The more likely exit route is through the patio doors on the side of the apartment facing the resort pool. It's been widely reported that these doors were closed but had been left unlocked. The team explore the route she could have taken had she left this way. The apartment is situated at the corner of two roads. From the patio door, steps lead directly out onto the street. Former police search advisor Gary Ligg believes it's most likely she would have headed downhill towards the Ocean Club reception to the pool area and tapas bar.
There's quite a slope on this road.
Yeah.
And it takes you past the reception area. If she's walking, with a tendency to walk downhill. If she's looking for a mum and dad, she may have an inkling or some knowledge that they're in here because this is where they're frequent.
Coming down here, this is the first area of welcoming light.
It is.
So a disorientated child would probably tend to home in on that. So.
Gary Ligg has devised search plans for over 100 serious criminal investigations. In this case, he would immediately advise a wider search of the area.
If she is lost and she's a lot warmer than the ambient temperature around, we're going to use the helicopter with a forward-looking infrared.
But why would a child wander off? A child would go to find her parents.
Parents, yes.
That's what she'd do, and she must know where the pool is.
Are you going to dismiss the possibility that she's wandered off at this early stage?
We can't do that, David. We've got to look at that as a possibility, and that has to be the priority, however unlikely a scenario that is. From what we can, that's security guard.
2 hours after Madeleine was reported missing, the volunteers started to look further afield for any sign of her.
Everybody that was in the village was out, and they did a complete sweep of the beach and all up the rocks and all at the back of the houses.
You could hear from one end of Luge to the other end of Luge people shouting out Madeleine's name.
Everyone was sort of on an automatic rather than talking to each other.
If it was quiet at one end, you could hear the others shouting at the other end of Luge, or in every little alleyway going around Luge.
I kept thinking deep inside that she's going to be found.
Volunteers and Mark Warner's staff continued searching into the early hours of the morning.
It was sort of like, we're not finding her, this has never happened, we've always found the child.
As the night went on, it got colder and later, everybody started realising that this isn't going to be as good an outcome as what we were hoping.
It got really more and more, where is she? And you'd walk past people and they'd have tears streaming down their face.
The police arrived with the police dogs, and it was very late then, so I don't think there was anything else that night that we could really do.
Something was seriously wrong.
At 4:30 a.m, the volunteers reluctantly abandoned their search for the night.
If Madeleine had wandered off, I would definitely have expected her to have been found by a member of the public. There are a lot of other apartments overlook the street and the exit from the apartment down the stairs. And you would have expected somebody to see a small child, and I would have thought intervened.
Dispatch's team of experts have tested one theory, that Madeleine wandered off on her own. Next, they look at the possibility that she might have been abducted and uncover some worrying leads. In the Portuguese resort of Praia da Luz, 5 criminal experts commissioned by Dispatches are reviewing the mysterious disappearance 168 days ago of Madeleine Mccann.
Yes. But this time we're not talking about wandering about, we're talking about the open ground.
Within 10 hours, Madeleine's story was already causing ripples around the world.
Well, we've got some more breaking news for you this morning. Very serious story is developing and is coming through.
News of Madeleine's disappearance reached the British media by 7:45 the following morning.
It's thought that she may have been abducted.
The shutters have been broken open and they've gone into the room and taken that.
From the moment Madeleine was reported missing, Kate and Jerry McCann have been adamant that she was taken.
The thing about a car is you're moving much more towards this end. It's surprising how many offenders in all sorts of...
Having considered it unlikely that Madeleine wandered off by herself, the team of experts now look at whether abduction could indeed be a possibility.
You can't rule out the possibility that this was a chance abduction and somebody just happened to stumble across her. You can't rule out the possibility that somebody had targeted her, having watched what had happened on previous nights and set in place a plan to remove that child for whatever reason. So the tapas bar is over that sort of orangey yellow roof building. Yeah, it's just round there, isn't it?
The team want to see just how possible it would have been to abduct Madeleine. How could someone get into her bedroom unnoticed? How could they avoid being caught while people were checking on the children? And how could they get away unseen if her parents were watching the apartment from the restaurant?
To be sure of the line of sight is to stand either at the tapas bar or at the doors. Yes. Because of the elevation of the doors.
So where's the reception?
Here. This is it.
They head for the tapas bar to find out just what the McCanns could see of the apartment from their dinner table. To reach it, you must go through the Ocean Club reception.
Good morning. I'm an ex-detective from England. No, if we're not guests, they won't allow us to. So.
Our team were not allowed into the Ocean Club, but local journalist Len Port did get in the day after Madeleine disappeared. His photographs show what the McCanns and their group could see of the apartment from their table.
This picture here shows the scene from the tapas bar. Yeah. It's more or less from the table they were sitting at.
You can't see below halfway down the door that they left insecure.
Yeah.
And you can't see those steps up there at all,
not
can you?
at all.
So somebody being wary could quite easily enter and leave.
And depending on where you are with these umbrellas, you'd see even less, because they stick up over the top of the fence.
Professor Dave Barclay is a leading international forensic scientist. He developed best practice in the UK. As well as the Omar bombing, he's advised in 225 cold case murders in the last 6 years. From the photos, he concludes the McCanns would not have been able to see an intruder from their restaurant table. But would an intruder have avoided being spotted by one of Madeleine's parents or their friends on their regular visits to Madeleine's bedroom?
It would be easy for somebody to get in and out of there without arousing any attention.
Any attention. And with the insecurity, we know that the time required to go in there, remove a child, you could be in and out in less than a minute.
Yes.
If providing you've done the necessary amount of pre-planning. Well, shall we just walk down and just have a look and see what we can see from the road here?
The team revisit the apartment to see how much planning an abductor would have needed in order to get in unseen. They start in the car park at the back of the apartment. It has been widely reported that according to the McCanns, the back door was locked and the shutters of the children's bedroom window were closed. If they had to force entry, could an offender get in that way unseen?
If you're a burglar, if you just pop over that wall, you're actually quite hidden when you're
That's
fiddling
right.
with the windows.
Well, it's a classic burglary.
Yeah,
It is.
But it's all overlooked.
It is overlooked. You wouldn't target that.
No.
Unless you could hide behind that wall.
That window and that
cunningly
shutter,
designed.
when they left the property, was
Secured.
The front sliding windows were open. And next to the front sliding windows is a gate to the street.
Search expert Gary Ligg thinks the much more likely entry point is on the side of the apartment facing the resort. Here there are sliding patio doors which were closed but left unlocked, according to all the reports. The patio steps lead directly to the road.
If anybody can get in there through the sliding windows, why bother to go through the shutters in the first place?
Have a look here.
Defies any logic that somebody would use the rear entrance or exit when this is so secluded and already insecure.
That little gate, which doesn't seem to have any lock on it, goes straight onto the road.
Yes.
Given the ease of entry and the seclusion on the pool side of the apartment, the team begin to see abduction as a real possibility.
We're going to check on another child. Where exactly was it?
The media quickly accepted the abduction theory as the most likely explanation of what had happened to Madeleine.
Please, if you have Madeleine, let her come home to her mummy, daddy, brother and sister.
Having looked closely at the location and possible ways an abductor could get in, the team returned to the apartment at night to look at how a person might use the dark to escape unnoticed.
Is that where the alleyway comes in?
While the bedroom side of the apartment is well lit, the steps leading to the patio doors are in darkness.
There's lots of light around that side, and if you look in there, there's shadows all the way up, and it's easy to sneak out of this gate as well.
The team focus on the alleyway along the pool side of the apartment block. Team leader Chris Stevenson thinks it's an obvious escape route.
But this alleyway here, because it's out of sync of that street light, is quite dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you're in here, or you've jumped over that wall, I don't think anybody would see you. They certainly couldn't see you from the tapas bar.
Halfway down this alleyway, they discover there's another one that runs between the two apartment blocks and into the car park.
The only way, if you go down that alleyway, of leaving is through the car park, because to go straight on is a dead end. There's no other exit route. If you've got a car, for instance, parked in the back car park, you're actually better off
So you just go
going
down
out
there
this way,
through between the
two blocks of flats into the car. Whereas to go that way, you're very much more subject to being seen, aren't you?
You are.
The team pose another question. If spotted, would an intruder raise suspicions?
There was a report of somebody walking away from this area with a child wrapped in a blanket.
You then become a tourist, don't you, holding a child that's sleepy?
It has some very distinct localities in it, and it wouldn't be...
As the experts begin to think an abduction is practical for someone with local knowledge of the area, forensic psychologist David Cantor outlines what kind of person might target Madeleine.
We haven't really talked about the victimology, about a 4-year-old girl being abducted. It's not a young baby that would be more typically taken by a woman who's looking for some sort of substitute or replacement child. It's not a teenager or a pubescent young girl that really can be abducted in relation to very obvious sexual activity. It's a much more ambiguous area, possibly more towards the end of somebody who's a bit disturbed, a bit confused, who would take a child that they saw the opportunity to take.
There are people, very few and very rare, but there are individuals who have some sort of sexual obsession and can even get an obsession with a particular child or a child that has a particular look about her. And that seems to me a possibility within that framework of somebody who's around that area who saw her and really became obsessed with the need to take her.
Those people who abduct children around that sort of age very typically will release them after a while. But my concern is that individual would be totally shocked and overawed by hundreds of journalists being all over the place.
If this was the case, it would change the nature of the search.
At this moment, I can confirm to you that this was an abduction, but we believe the girl is still alive and well.
In the following days, police and volunteers widened their search to the outlying areas of Praia da Luz.
You're literally searching everywhere. You were having to look in drainage holes, you have to be looking in the wells and in the ruins. You knew that you could have been looking for something not very nice.
With the volunteers operating on their own and without a brief of what to look for, their effectiveness was limited. Although the volunteers searched the beach on the night, Gary Ligg is concerned that it wasn't followed by a more thorough police search.
If you look down into this area, it's pitch black out there. There's nooks and crannies and there's hidey holes. You can't rely that that area's clear. It's got to be researched.
Gary Ligg and Chris Stevenson soon find other places which should automatically have been searched.
There's about 8 to 10 of these things that come out. Now, they're all like this.
Yeah.
That's clear visually for as far as we can see, which is, what, 30 yards? But this is the outrun. Are the drains this big underneath the entire village, under those manholes?
You would always have to be looking at the possibility that this child may have been the victim of a crime, may be dead, and therefore the possibility of what we call a body deposition site is something that you would have to bear in mind with the searches that are conducted.
Just outside the resort of Praia da Luz, the landscape takes on a completely different look, and in daylight, Gary Ligg finds yet more potential hiding places.
Of course, we're talking about something that's been hidden. We're going to get down to the shell of the building and get everything else out.
In the dry countryside around Luz, there are hundreds of wells, a perfect place to hide evidence, and another challenge for skilled searchers.
And having looked in it there, I can see the reflection on the surface of the water. I can see there's nothing in that well above the surface of the water. I can't see under the lid, of course. But we've got water. We've no idea how deep it is. By coincidence, you've got water and a confined space, and I've got people that are dual trained in both.
Back in town, our team discover another intriguing hiding place. They spot large industrial bins all over the resort.
There have been cases in the UK where bodies have been disposed of in wheelie bins and then taken directly to refuse tips and dumped there in the hope that they'd be covered up.
We were told to search everywhere, including the bins. And in Praia da Luz, they're quite big and scary looking. Although I saw police searching, I personally didn't see police looking in the bins like we did. But I don't think we looked in every bin.
There's a world of difference to looking in a refuse bin and tipping it on its side, emptying it all out, looking through every bag and refilling it. When you've done that, you can say that there's no pyjamas, there's no body in there.
Dispatches has learned that the bins are emptied nightly between midnight and 4 a.m. And even though a major search for a missing child was going on, they were still emptied on the night Madeleine disappeared. Since the collections were not stopped, there's another area that Gary Ligg knows needs prompt attention, but it's 30 kilometres away.
We need to find out where the landfill site is, and talk to the authorities, find out where it went, and start trying to identify which area of the landfill these particular bins were emptied.
Ideally, you would secure all of the bins in the immediate area and make sure that the local authority don't dispose of any of the contents until the search team have had the opportunity to check them all.
We asked the Portuguese police whether the bins and local landfill had been searched. They chose not to comment.
I have no facts that sustain that the child is alive or not. We are searching for the child, and till the moment she appears, we can say nothing more.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please don't scare her. Please tell us where to find her.
The Guarda Nacional Republicana informed that the searches are coming to an end.
We just don't know what's happened because we haven't got the hard physical evidence. I think we can realise that the two ends of the spectrum are now vanishingly small, that she wandered off by herself and is alive and well somewhere, or that some organised gang took her. It's a strange place for them to take a child from. But we don't know whether she met some harm within the immediate family circle, either accidental or deliberate, or whether somebody in the area did break in through either the window, the child's bedroom window, or the sliding doors and took her. It would be a really bizarre and strange crime if that took place, but bizarre and strange crimes do happen.
We know from very many studies that if the family is not involved in the disappearance of a child, then it's very likely indeed that it's somebody relatively local, somebody who has seen the child before, who knows the local situation, who knows the possibilities for getting in and getting out away with the child. So, to my mind, that's the most likely possibility.
The team have considered whether Madeleine wandered off, and they take seriously the possibility of abduction.
Up at the junction, because to go straight on is a dead end. There's no other exit.
Next they explore the theory an abductor could have been close to home. Five experts, commissioned by dispatches, are in the Portuguese resort of Praia da Luz, applying their 134 years' experience of criminal investigation to the case of Madeleine Mccann.
Oh, right. That time of night the shops would be open, wouldn't they? You'd have more than one sighting.
Having dismissed the theory that Madeleine could have wandered off and looked at the possibility she had been abducted by an outsider, they now consider whether someone closer to home was involved in her disappearance. Forensic psychologist David Cantor argues that statistically this is the most likely theory.
It's surprising how many offenders in all sorts of serious offences are very local.
The most important aspect of a local individual abducting Madeleine would be that they were familiar with the locality and that they were aware that she was there, and that they saw the opportunity created by the fact that the parents weren't with Madeleine all of the time. There could be an almost impulsive possibility about it. What you find with some of these offenders is that they have a notion of all the circumstances coming together to allow them to abduct the child, and they will be alert to all the possibilities and suddenly decide now's the time to go for it, and then they would make their move.
It seems to me the local offenders is a real possibility just because of the locality.
I'd want to know whether he's effectively stalked the house, knows that Madeleine's in there.
It could be somebody who'd been wandering around, looking out,
by the opportunity.
looking for, exactly, looking for opportunities, who became aware of the opportunity. But the really interesting thing there is how did he become aware of the opportunity?
How would you know there was a small child in there who was your target? It must be that you have done some sort of pre-planning,
which makes you local in some ways and makes you around the place. At least 24 hours, possibly for a much longer period, around and known in the area.
You've got to add into this equation the fact that this family were on holiday and had only been in the area for a few days. If an offender was targeting Madeleine as a victim, then it only had a few days to prepare. It could well be, though, that because those apartments are regularly occupied by families, that the offender would know that somewhere in there was a child in the age range and of the type that he was looking for.
Nearly 2 weeks into the inquiry, Portuguese police also started focusing on a local suspect.
In these ITV News pictures, Robert Murat can be seen chatting to police officers.
11 days after Madeleine's disappearance, the police called in local resident Robert Murat. They searched his house. The next day, he was formally declared an arguido, an official suspect.
The events was named as a formal suspect.
Robert Murat lives near the McCann's apartment. Our experts went to his house to consider the reasons the police may have targeted him as a suspect. Could he fit their local offender theory? Did he have the opportunity or access? Had he been seen behaving suspiciously?
This guy is an English-speaking, bilingual individual who, to all intents and purposes, offered assistance when he found out that there was a missing girl. So, was there something that we're not aware of that led the Portuguese police to declare him a suspect?
On the night Madeleine disappeared, Robert Murat said he was at home with his mother, but there were challenges to his alibi.
There are 2 potential sightings where members of the party say they saw Murat at the club.
Living so nearby, he was often seen near the apartment, and there was speculation that he could have been stalking the family. But David Cantor has another explanation.
For him, the nearest coffee bar for him takes him past the apartment. If he's going to go to the supermarket, which is the only major shop nearby, he's got to go past the apartment. So he's going to be in this area.
Chris Stevenson wonders if Murat could have tracked the family's movements from his house.
Some of the media have made an issue about a line of sight from Robert Murat's house to the apartment.
Search expert Gary Ligg isn't convinced.
Chris, from here you can see the apartment and a couple of windows, but that's all.
But you can only just see part of the
window.
The front lounge window and the kitchen window on the left-hand side.
And the entrance patio. You can't see the back door.
No.
The team conclude the evidence against Robert Murat is thin. He became a victim of media pressure. Chris Stevenson notes similarities with the Soham case, where Ian Huntley also hung around the investigation.
It may well be that 10 or 12 days into the investigation there was an element of desperation, and this individual was being identified as somebody that lived in the area, had come forward to help, and close tenuous links to Huntley's behaviour led to him being identified and the police feeling obliged almost to actually treat him as a suspect and investigate accordingly.
The tabloid media's perspective of what was happening here was very much that man is getting an inside track on the investigation because he's offered himself as an interpreter, and therefore it's not...
Matt Tapp is a police media advisor. He handled the press for the Soham case. In the absence of a structured strategy, he knows the media will fill the vacuum with unhelpful speculation that can seriously distract the police.
If you look at the Washington sniper case, on day 10 of that inquiry, the Washington Post's headline was "Clueless." If you look at the Soham investigation, on day 10, the headline in at least 3 tabloid newspapers in the UK was "Not one clue." On day 6 of this inquiry, there was at least 1 headline in a UK paper which said "Clueless." That builds tremendous pressure, and in the midst of all of that is a little girl who's gone missing. And the little girl who's gone missing is almost a forgotten story. The big story is the incompetence of the investigation.
The police found no trace of Madeleine at Robert Murat's house. He remains an official suspect, but has always protested his innocence. Under Portuguese law, he'll be a suspect for 8 months unless charges are brought or the status is formally dropped.
In terms of the family, we need to know what there is about.
With Robert Murat no longer significant to them, the Dispatch's experts arrive at what in Britain would have been the first line of inquiry in the case of a missing child: the family.
The events that occurred that night. And
one of the reasons why any investigation into a missing child must initially focus around the immediate family members is because we know from research that something like 70% of child victims of homicide are in fact victims of family members, and therefore it is a crucial area of any investigation which has to be addressed very early on before the inquiry can actually progress and spread further.
The priority for forensic scientist Dave Barclay would be to test the physical evidence to prove the accounts given by the family.
Going back to your point about the forensic, when we look at the stuff to do with the family, because they've all got legitimate access, there we'd be looking for things that don't fit, anomalies between what they're saying happened and what we've found from our observations. And they could range from just difficulties because you're overcome by emotion to what we call staging. The classic is a domestic murder, husband and wife, and the husband then tries to make it look like a burglary. or he tries to clear up blood in the kitchen and doesn't do it successfully enough. That's staging.
The couple were placed in the front row in St Peter's Square.
1 month on, the McCanns were travelling around Europe to raise awareness of Madeleine, but suspicion about them was mounting.
How do you deal with the fact that more and more people seem to be pointing the finger at you?
There is absolutely no way Kate and I are involved in this abduction.
With the arrival of British experts in Portugal, further DNA tests were carried out as part of a review of the case. It's reported that they discover traces of blood in the Ocean Club apartment and traces of Madeleine's hair in the car the McCanns hired 25 days after Madeleine disappeared. Kate McCann is called in for questioning.
Kate is insisting she welcomes every opportunity to advance this beleaguered investigation.
The following day, her husband Jerry is questioned.
Kate and Jerry have both been declared arguidos with no bail conditions and no charges have been brought against them. The investigation continues.
David, are they still insisting on their innocence?
They certainly are. No further comment.
From early May, the abduction theory was immediately accepted because the McCanns reportedly said the shutters of Madeleine's bedroom window had been forced open.
The shutters have been broken open and they've gone into the room and taken Madeleine.
That there was no way that she could have opened the shutters herself. She'd definitely been taken.
And the powder stuck to that area, something sticky. But
with questions being asked about how an abductor could get into the apartment, our experts take a closer look at the shutters.
The shutter goes into the window frame, and I'll just stop that there. Right, that's the bottom of the shutter. And there's 2 finger marks off to the right. Do look as if they're from inside, and pad marks, finger marks.
And they're at some distance apart.
Yeah, okay.
They're not 2 thumbs, are they?
They look thummy. If I'm inside, I'm doing it, I'm going to be like that, aren't I?
Yeah.
So is that from the outside?
Doing it that way?
Like that way, and trying to push it up?
Yes.
But you'd never do that with those shutters because they've got a ratchet handle.
No.
You might try and help the shutter down, mightn't you? If the window's open and you're reaching in from inside, you would get that, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Because they weren't allowed inside the apartment where the McCanns had been staying, Chris Stevenson and Dave Barclay test their theories at another apartment block. These shutters, unlike the ones in the McCann's apartment, are operated electrically, but Dave Barclay believes they could provide vital evidence in working out how the McCann's shutters could have been handled.
We've got some great stuff here, because this is aluminium, lightweight aluminium with a fine coating of some probably polyurethane paint or something like that. It would mark really easily, and it does.
Perhaps we need to just look at the angle of the thumbs, because now they're in a V shape.
And they're pretty well, you've pretty well got the whole of the thumb against it. If you go back the other way and do the same thing again, right, now you've only got the outside of your thumb on it. I believe it's from the inside. We must be very careful that we're not saying this is actually staging, but it's difficult to see how anybody could have interfered with those shutters from outside without leaving some trace. In fact, having looked at them, I think it's almost impossible.
If they were somebody that was actually within the family who was living in the apartment, then it would be difficult to draw any inference other than the fact that the person whose marks they are had at some time raised or lowered the shutters, which, living in the apartment, is probably, or could be, a daily occurrence.
The Portuguese police chose to interview Kate and Jerry McCann on the basis of physical evidence, specks of blood in the apartment and hair in the hire car. But even if the blood was Madeleine's, our experts believe it's far from clear how it was shed.
You wouldn't necessarily automatically expect to find blood if there'd been something happened inside, though. Just because we don't find blood doesn't mean to say that there hasn't been some sort of violence.
And indeed, if we did find blood, it's not unusual for children to trip and get a bloody nose and so on. If you found, in particular, I think in this case, or any case like this, blood on the floor where efforts have been made to clean it up, and the parents did not say that they'd done that, as long as it was the child's blood, then that would be very significant indeed.
Yeah.
Dave Barclay maintains that while the DNA results will tell you who the blood belongs to, without context, they can't explain how it got there.
Remember, forensic science is not just a single test result, it's setting it in context. So if you get a result that seems to indicate one thing, you'd want to confirm it by other tests from other areas.
Rumours about the forensic evidence go unchallenged. This week, there was a report that body fluids were allegedly found in the McCann's hire car.
I still find it very difficult to conceive of how those results got in the boot of the hire car, if they're as reported. And I'd like to keep my options open. You've still got to work out where the body has been and how it got transported in the hire car that wasn't hired for 25 days. Just almost incomprehensible. So we should just wait and see what the results show. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility that they will completely exonerate the McCanns.
Now official suspects in their daughter's disappearance, the McCanns return home to Leicestershire, determined to challenge the forensic results and clear their names. The next day, the Portuguese police passed their case files to the public prosecutor. Press speculation continues unabated, and new theories emerge almost daily. Some newspapers suggest the Portuguese police are about to charge the McCanns. But less than 2 weeks after being made suspects, the public prosecutor announces the McCanns will not be re-questioned. With the confusion surrounding the evidence against the McCanns, what do our team make of the Portuguese investigation as a whole? Having considered all 3 possible theories for Madeleine's disappearance, which one do they think is most plausible? Dispatches sent a team of expert criminal investigators to Praia da Luz to shed light on the disappearance of Madeleine Mccann. Having reviewed the Portuguese police investigation, the team meet to discuss their findings. Police media consultant Matt Tapp thinks the Portuguese police's lack of communication with the media hampered the investigation.
Going back to basics, a crime has happened. You need as much information and intelligence that's accurate as possible. And we are used in the UK to securing that information and intelligence partly through media appeals. None of that actually happened because the police say, because of their laws of secrecy, they were bound to say nothing.
It's crucial to do not just on-the-record briefings, but to be able to talk to the media off the record, to provide some background information to ensure that their approach is focused and in line with the investigation approach. Because if that isn't the case, the media can be extremely disruptive.
One day in August, here are 2 English newspapers, The Sun, The Daily Express. What's The Sun's front page? She may be dead. The same day, Madeleine, she is alive. Here is, I think, the demonstration of what you can anticipate when the police choose or are not allowed to fill the void and others fill it in their place.
Search expert Gary Ligg visited key locations around Praia da Luz. He's still concerned about the quality of the initial police search strategy.
Yeah, volunteers, great. They're here, they're wanting to do something. And there are roles that you can play with them. But I won't be satisfied until my search teams have actually been in there. That's clear visually for as far as we can see.
The large sewers and industrial bins are still Gary Ligg's main worry.
It's not clear if the bins were searched to a degree where you could be confident she wasn't in one. And if they were removed, there's been no suggestion of a follow-up to find out where they are and search the landfill site there.
Or whether it's
forensic scientist Dave Barclay considers what might have happened to Madeleine.
Having seen the circumstances and the layout of the apartment, it looks to me more likely the priorities are higher that some harm happened to her within the apartment. No more than that.
Right.
He argues the Portuguese police forensics work may have compromised the investigation.
It's clear that the forensic examination on the first day wasn't what we would have expected. There were opportunities missed, and one of those opportunities did a great disservice to the McCanns. Had they been more aggressive in protecting the apartment and doing a full forensic examination of that apartment, it may have been that the McCanns were put completely out of it on day one. We really need to wait till we get the actual results. I've seen comments that the Forensic Science Service has said this or that, and I worked for them for 20 odd years. I never knew any forensic scientist to give details of case results in a live case. So I think, I hate to say this, but possibly quite a lot of it is being made up by the media.
Team leader Chris Stevenson thinks the Portuguese police may not have been prepared for a case of this magnitude.
They only have very small number of cases of child abduction and child murder, and therefore it's inevitable that they won't have the same expertise and experience that we have in the UK. There did seem to be a lack of grip almost in the first few hours, and we know from our experience here that is a crucial part of any investigation.
It's not a young baby that would be more typically taken by a woman who's looking for some sort of substitute or replacement child. It's not.
Forensic psychologist David Cantor thinks the unprecedented media attention put pressure not only on the investigation, but on the potential abductor.
In the past, when young children have been abducted by a stranger, by somebody who is obsessed and wants to abuse the child, they tend to have kept the child, and often in fact to have allowed the child to go free after some time. But I would have thought such a person would have been totally overawed and horrified by the media storm that so quickly descended on that particular locality, and I think such an individual would have got very frightened indeed about the consequences of their actions, and may well have done something that they'd never intended to do.
It's now 168 days, almost to the minute, since Kate McCann reported that her daughter Madeleine was missing.